Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders, the Authority Positioning Coach. Today we have with us Anthony Garcia, who is a sales trainer and the author of Catapulting Commissions. Anthony, welcome to the program.
Mike, excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
You know, I love when, you know how you can tell a lot about someone from, whatever, like their email address and you can, I remember back in the day, like Biker Babe at AOL, and it's like, oh, I guess they like bikes or motorcycles. Well, I love the name of your book, Catapulting Commissions, because it's not just increasing commissions, it is catapulting. And so I love that word picture there. So give us a little bit of background on yourself, and then let's jump into what you do as a sales trainer and talk about your book.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have been in sales for nearly 2 decades, in sales or sales leadership, 3 different industries. I started in direct sales, I worked in business-to-business sales, and in the later half of my career worked in a high-complex medical sales where I was actually selling surgical implants to surgeons in surgery. And Catapulting Commissions was created because I achieved levels of success in each industry that put me in the top tier, started putting income in top tier income tax brackets and doing really well. And I was consistently asked, what are you doing? And it wasn't that I was doing anything different, right? It was the same process that I go through in Catapulting Commissions that I did when I was selling a really cheap product direct to consumers, all the way to, now negotiating multi-million-dollar contracts with large healthcare systems. That process to achieve a level of success stood the same. That's how Catapulting Commissions was created. And what I do for clients and what I do for those that choose to work with me, I provide high-level coaching for specific individuals who are already making over $100,000 a year in sales, looking to break that next barrier of $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 in annualized income from their sales career. So that's really where the bulk of my business comes in. I do get requested consistently to come do workshops, sales trainings for a team who's looking to improve their sales. That's another avenue in my business.
So basically, you must already have a good head of steam and momentum, because then that way your techniques are going to take shape a lot faster than, hey, I was a plumber last year and now I'm thinking about getting into sales. Can you help me? So you want to work with people or teams that have some really good momentum in place.
Absolutely. I think that the fundamental principle of being in sales is pretty simple, right? I mean, we had sales training for years. I mean, one of the very first sales books I ever read was by Zig Ziglar, right? The ability to learn to sell a product, present a product, talk features and benefits, handle objections, ask for the order, all of that is really sales 101. What I do is I want someone who has that fundamental and wants to excel. So I'm looking for people that are trying to get into the major leagues or already there, that have cut their teeth for a few years, and to help those that are looking to cut their teeth or looking to be new into sales, I've released the Catapulting Commission Sales course specifically for those people. You can take it, digest it at your own rate, and that'll help you get the blocking and tackling. But majority of my business is those high performers looking to go to that next level.
And is there a specific industry that you tend to focus in, or a vertical, or is it just sales? Because as you know, and I know that, a lot of the marketing techniques or sales techniques, they work in the industry, any industry, but do you have a sweet spot that you tend to work in?
I'm pretty diverse, to be honest with you. I have clients that are in a little bit of every industry. I don't take clients currently for medical sales or pharmaceutical sales just because of a conflict of interest. So as long as they're outside of that realm, I've had those. People who are in that area, I typically stay away because there's some industry trade secrets that I can't divulge at this time.
Yeah. And do you work with more salespeople one-on-one or with a team?
I actually work with sales leaders or sales managers. So typically like the number 1 or number 2 sales rep on a team, or I work with sales managers sometimes that will want me to spend more time with their team, but typically they have me work with their high performers.
Yeah. So an organization. And I'm
Correct.
confident that you can get into DISC and sales motivation, and everybody's motivated different ways. But what do you find is a key to getting the most out of a sales force or a sales team when you're brought in? What is the number one thing that they bring you in for? And then what are you finding is a key to really make that come to life?
Yeah, I think that, obviously everyone has a different motivation track record, right? Everyone's motivated by something different. Everybody wants something different. The way to get the most out of people is to create a team. It has to be a true team dynamic. See, Mike, people are going to work harder for the greater good of the team than they're ever going to work for themselves. And the mistake that sales leadership makes is we highlight individual performers. We say, great job, Susie, you finished this much to quota. Great job, Bill, you did this well. And you highlight all these individuals, right? But we don't spend enough time talking about the team. And that starts from the top down. So to motivate a sales force, everyone has to know what their role is. And so as you work layers up and you go vertical in a business, it gets more critical. But I think at that middle level, right, that mid-management level where you manage a team, let's say 10 to 30 people, 5 to 30 people, you're the most influential person in your organization at that state because you have one-on-one direct action. And you can tell everyone, hey, here's our goal for XYZ quarter. Here's our goal for this year. Here's what we're trying to accomplish. And you breathe fire and you sell the visions for this team to each individual person. And then you sell each person what they're going to contribute to the role. And once they're bought in contributing to that team goal, you can motivate anyone.
The individual goals fall into place.
Part of something.
Yeah, I was just going to. Before you said that, I was thinking it cannot be. Here's what corporate handed down to us. Let's get her done. It's got to be that bigger vision, that story, that approach. And it reminds me of an old story. Maybe you've heard the example, but it's like these bricklayers were out in the hot sun, and this guy walks by and says to the first one of the three, "Hey, what are you doing?" He's like, "Slaving in the hot sun." And he goes, "Okay." He asked the next guy, "What are you doing?" He's like, "Just trying to make a living." And the next guy, he says, "What are you doing?" He goes, "We are laying the foundation for this amazing building that's going to help change the world in whatever industry." And it's all in your perspective and in your attitude, because the first two guys were just waiting for the bell to ring to get done. The other guy's like, look at this vision taking shape.
Absolutely. No, I think 100%. If you breathe the cookie cutter message from the top, you're going to get zero buying.
Yeah. And it's not as easy as it sounds just to say that and throw it out. So these team leaders, sales organization leaders, you might say that in a blog post and, hey, now Anthony's out of a job because he told the secret sauce. Nope. Because it takes someone from the outside with that outside fresh perspective to come in and go, let's roll up our sleeves and do this together, because even that sales manager, that team leader needs to have that perspective. Is that some of what you find when you work with these people? Absolutely, right.
It's very easy to get blinded by your own company culture, right? My company culture says this. And so it's very, we get pats on the back sometimes for things that don't deserve pats on the back, right? So if I'm working with a sales leader and I say, okay, you have 30 people in your organization, you have everybody bought into your goal, your team, you're breathing this fire. But when I ask you how much time have you spent with your team, and you tell me I only speak to my top 10% of performers, I say, look, it takes a 3 to 5 minute phone call, a 10-minute phone call to that bottom 10%, because at the end of the year, push comes to shove, you're going to meet those numbers too. And if you've not taken the time to develop that relationship, breathe that fire, motivate and inspire that bottom 10, you're going to miss your number. You can't always go to the well of top performers and ask to get more and get more and get more. It has to be a team effort. And so that's what I do. I provide that outside perspective, that outside accountability on holding yourself to a higher standard than what, the corporate goal is. Because sometimes you might be above the corporate goal, but your personal goal or your team goal is significantly higher.
Do you find, when you were mentioning the top or the bottom, or do you find, like in as a general rule that, like the Pareto's Principle, 80-20, there's always going to be the top 20% that provide 80% of the results. But do you find that there is that bottom percent, whatever that is, 10%, that no matter how hard you work with them, just they're going to be mediocre performers, and maybe your energy is better spent to the middle pack that could actually get to be into the the upper level because they just need some guidance. The upper level people, you give them some attention, they're going to go through the stratosphere. But is there a percent or a segment of the team that at some point they either need to move on, or you just need to put less and less energy into them because you just know it, they're not going to get to the level that they need to be?
Absolutely. I definitely think that area of your sales force is going to exist where you have to ignore and spend time. And for me personally, that area exists when people, two things have to happen for me to give up on somebody. One, they think they're greater than the good of the team. They put themselves outside the team development. And two, they have a will issue, not a skill issue. They're not willing to work hard. They're not willing to put in the extra hours. So if those two things fall in line, then you're absolutely right. I do think my time and my energy is better spent elsewhere, and I do advise that. However, because someone's not performing well this year, this month, this quarter, it doesn't mean they're not going to perform well the next year, the next month, the next quarter, right? Let's face it, right? Quota gets assigned in the corporate structure. Quota gets assigned to people at a different rate all the time. Some year you have a high quota, some year you have a small quota. I look at it like this. If I can spend majority of my time with my top performers, I will. But that doesn't mean that I ignore those bottom performers, and I don't let the bottom performers feel like they're ignored. Because once bottom performers feel like they're ignored, it becomes self-sabotage. My company doesn't like me, my manager doesn't like me, and you know what? They're on LinkedIn looking for a new job. And the expense to replace that person in the corporate structure is significantly more expensive than it would have been to take a few extra phone calls, to do an extra one-on-one, to breathe some fire into the person and say, hey, look, you know what? 2020, you sucked. I got to be honest with you, Bill. You didn't do well. I need 2021 to be phenomenal. And here's what I'm going to need to have happen. And here's what's going to happen in 2021, Bill. You're going to perform. You're going to do well. You're going to make money you want to. If not, you're going to have another year like this. It's not going to be a question of me wanting to fire you. It's going to be a question of how long you're going to stay here before you quit because you're not making the money you want to make. Having that difficult conversation and telling that bottom performer that, hey, I'm still here, I'm watching you, gives people a reputation to live up to. I mean, it goes back to how to win friends and influence people. You give that bottom performer a reputation to live up to. I'm in this thing for the long ball, right? I want my company's trajectory to going up year over year over year. I'm not here for the one year sprint, the 1 quarter sprint. So yeah, I do think you spend time with top performers, but you definitely don't let bottom performers feel neglected, and you don't want bottom performers to feel they're being neglected.
Yep. Yeah, you're not going to jump to an early conclusion. You got to give them a chance, but then sometimes it is, having the come to Jesus kind of a conversation, like you were saying, and sometimes that wakes people up, and that's awesome. Let's move over to your book, because I know that you talk about SMART goals, and it's not as simple as the S.M.A.R.T.E.R, because that just sounds so easy and cliche, but let's talk a little bit about why SMART goals aren't enough, and it makes me think about something I've said for years. In fact, one of my first books I wrote probably 6, 7, 8 years ago was called Believing Your Why, and it's based on the fact that you need to have a why behind your goals, but even more than that, you need to believe that why and believe it can be done. So what is your take on SMART goals?
Yeah, Mike, we're going to have a lot of similarities here, right? SMART goals are a great foundation. They've been around since 1981, right? I mean, that's going on nearly 40 years. People have been running around SMART goals, and it still drives me crazy when I hear companies hold these HR meetings or hold these programs and say, we're going to talk about SMART goals, right? We've heard it. We've heard it before. We've read it before. We've talked about it before. I mean, they're probably teaching this in high school now, right? Setting the SMART goal. Those fundamentals are great. What takes a great performer, a great sales rep, a great entrepreneur to an elite one is they have a SMARTER goal. And what the SMARTER goal is, it's a really easy acronym. We keep the same acronym for SMART, specific, measurable, actual, relevant, time, right? And we add the E and the R, which are similar to what you said. E, emotions. You have to be able to set a goal that is going to move you emotionally. You have to be so emotionally invested into this goal that it's the first thing you wake up and think about. It's the last thing you think about. If you haven't had an emotional breakdown over a sales goal or a career goal or entrepreneurship goal, you're not fully committed to the goal because the goal becomes consuming. And I talk about it in my book that, hey, I've been told multiple times, you work too hard. There's always next year. For me, that doesn't exist. I'm going to, if there was 25 hours in a day, I would work the 25 hours in a day. I am committed to my core that this goal I'm going to achieve. So I'm so emotionally invested to it that anyone around me knows that this emotion is genuine. This emotion is going to cause me to get up. And the R from the acronym SMARTER, rewarding. what is the reward going to be? And I talk a little bit about the reward can't solely be money, because if the reward is simply money, eventually you make enough money and money doesn't matter anymore, right? So, I mean, I have clients that have made $300,000-$400,000 grand a year, and they do it year in, year out. I'm like, okay, well, it's not a money issue no more, right? What's the reward? And so we find rewards that are truly going to tie into the why, right? So for me, every rewarding year, every goal, I have something tied into my family in a certain component of whether I want to put additional money away for savings, whether I want to be able to buy my wife something, or I want to go on a trip or something along those lines. There's always a reward that is, to me, it's more of an emotional rewarding connection as opposed to, hey, I want to make $500,000 grand this year. I want to make $700,000 this year. Those numbers aren't what motivate me right now.
Yes, it's like we learned in school, business school, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's not always the money. Sometimes it's the recognition and fulfillment and all of those things that tie into being able to achieve a goal. And I even think this too. Some people will talk about the BHAG, the big, hairy, audacious goal, and I think there's a fine line between having that to pull you, but setting it in the right way and having it be attainable. So if someone made that 100,000 last year and they set the big, hairy, audacious goal of $1 million, that's a big, hairy, audacious goal, but they might not internally believe that or find that it's feasible because it's way too much out of reach. What do you find in that respect?
I always tell people, I say, look, if you break your goal down and you simplify it and we reverse engineer the goal and you're like, hey, I want to make $1 million, right? And I'm going to go from 100. My first question is, okay, well, $1 million on a daily basis, do you know what that number is, right? And I don't know the number. I'm not going to do the math. Let's just say it's $3,900 a day or something along those lines. So every day you need to be able to say that you can produce $3,900 in income, not revenue, because if an entrepreneur, you have expenses. So you need to income $3,900 every day. Do you have that plan to do that tomorrow? No. Do you have that plan to do it the next day? No. Okay. Let's say 10 years from now, you want to make $1 million. Yeah. Okay. Well, in order to do that, we reverse engineer everything. And so I try to hit those metrics that say, okay, what's a step you're comfortable with? And we talk about in setting the smarter goals and putting that goal, I always account for adversity and I account for growth. So I say, okay, we're going to give you a 30% adversity bucket, right? So we're going to say if your goal is $1 million, we're going to shoot for 1.3 because that 30% adversity gives us the cushion. If you get sick, you get in a car accident, something out of your control happens, you're still on pace. 2, if you're trending above 130%, you know what? We're going to push you a little further and we're going to commit to a higher number. Likewise, if you're trending behind 30% at a certain metric, it's time for us to say, okay, hey, are we going to abandon this goal or are we going to pivot this goal? So I always try to make that goal in a realistic fashion for the skill set that the person has and for the opportunity that that person has. So if the goal is to grow 10x, I think that's phenomenal. How are you going to do it? If you can't articulate it to me, we have a bigger problem than setting a goal.
Yeah, it's kind of like when you watch Shark Tank and they're like, what do you want the money for? And they go, to hire a marketing agency. Wrong. We need to have a specific plan, and that ties into goal setting and sales as well. So I want to talk about the complacent sales syndrome that you talk about. How does that play into even setting goals, but also just achieving the bottom line that these companies are wanting to achieve? Because you say that it robs companies of millions of dollars a year.
Absolutely. So complacent sales syndrome is this. You have a tenured, trained sales force that does just enough, right? If we can call it the just enough sales syndrome, then we can call it that. But I call it complacent sales syndrome because you have a trained team that does just enough to get by. They'll do just enough to get 100% of quota. They'll do just enough to cover the basic necessities of life. They'll do just enough to ensure that they have job security for the next year. But as you get tenured and more talented in sales and marketing and entrepreneurship, you can do more to generate more, right? I know for certain that my level of skill in my sales industry, I can always produce more and I can generate more. The only difference between someone who isn't in a complacent sales syndrome category and someone who is the person who isn't is pursuing that more. They're pursuing that extra. So to get someone to pursue that extra, right, all you're trying to do is take the people, it goes back to, really simple book, good to great. Well, I'm trying to take people from great to best, from great to greatest. I'm trying to take you that you're already doing well to that next level. And in order to take somebody to that next level, it takes a couple things from sales leadership. It takes vision, development, and gratitude. right? If you can paint the vision that this company, this team, this individual, however it applies, is going to be the best, going to be the Kobe Bryant, the Michael Jordan, the LeBron James, whatever it is, you are going to be the number one, not only for this company, but for this industry. And how I paint vision to people is I say, look, what did you make last year? Someone's like, oh, I made $300,000 last year. And I'm like, what does that hourly break down to? And they'll break it down to like, oh, it's $100 an hour or something like that. I'm like, is that on 8 hours a week, 40 hours a week? Yeah. No, that's not what you made last year. That's not your hourly rate. Your hourly rate is $300,000 divided by 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, because you have the ability to produce and drive and generate revenue. And when you see that number, you're like, man, I can produce more. I can generate more. I can do something different. So you create this vision that people are going to be the best. And then you develop people, not for the company's goals or company's perspective, but you develop them for their goals and their perspectives. I cringe when I meet high-performing sales professionals that have made decent money but are financially illiterate.
Yeah.
And I tell them, I'm like, look, see, you made $250,000 last year and you spent $230,000.
Yep. That's kind of like an entrepreneur that brings in a consultant going, we need more revenue, incoming revenue. Okay, let's focus on that. But hold up, if you use the word picture of the bucket and you're pouring more water in the bucket, but all these holes are still letting it flow out, let's start with plugging up the holes. And then you don't need as much of an increase because now you're using the money in the right way. And same scenario in with what you just mentioned with sales.
Absolutely. So I truly believe that development that sales companies and entrepreneurs want to have, I don't want to develop you to be the next manager. I don't want to develop you to be in my Rising Star Club or my leadership club or whatever. Every company has a name for the next generation of sales leaders. That's natural. I want to develop you to be an awesome human. I want to develop you to be financially well off. And that might be, hey, you know what? We're going to take a data, guys. I'm going to teach you about how to generate a passive income source, right? Nobody wants to hear that, right? And I'm a big believer. I mean, I manage a high-performing team that the guys and girls that work for me are busting 60, 70 hours a week. They're paid very well. Every person on my team makes over 6 figures. And when I have that conversation with them, I'm like, hey, what do you have as a passive income stream? They look at me like, what are you talking about? I'm like, hey, man, I'm just saying something happens tomorrow, something in your industry, something you can't do what you do, where's your income going to come from? All right. And so I spend that time to develop people to get them out of that complacency, right? The complacent mentality in life and creating those multiple streams of income. I mean, that goes all the way to Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad Poor Dad, right? I am trying to ensure that we apply that to sales leadership and then gratitude, right? In order for you to get people to want to do more and believe more in themselves, they just have to feel appreciated for what they're already doing. And there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, man, I think you did a phenomenal job last year. I think things are going fantastic. I'm really excited about how you're going. You've hit your quota 6 years in a row. Great work. Hey, I just want to let you know, 6 years in a row, you didn't finish the number one spot. How are we going to get that, right?
Yeah.
You can have those conversations after you express gratitude for the success, or we talked about in the beginning of the call, express gratitude for those who aren't having such a successful year and lighting that fire that next year might be their year.
Or you don't wait until that yearly review to do that gratitude or that prompting. You give them these nuggets all throughout the month, the quarter, and you want to, it reminds me of the book, have you ever read the book Whale Done?
No, I have not.
It's a really, really good book. I think the author is Spencer Johnson, but instead of, well done, it's whale done. And it's a fictional story, but it basically is this consultant goes down to SeaWorld and watches Shamu show. And he goes up to the trainer afterwards and he's like, how do you get that big old whale to do what you do? What do? Zap him with zappers? And they're like, no. We just watch for the whale to do something we want them to do and reward that. And we watch for them to do the next thing that we want them to do and we reward it. And we find that the whale, the animals, will respond to that positive motivation. And this guy goes, I'll bet you my sales organization or my team back home would respond to that. So he starts going back and watches when someone does something small, good, and he rewards that with either a positive comment or something. And he finds that people start perking up and going, well, I want more of that. I'm going to do more of what they just complimented me. And there is a time for the negative, hey, we need to keep this in mind and not do this anymore. But I think when you can watch for those moments to give that positive, then that just really opens up the people to really give the performance that you want. I'm confident that you teach that as well.
Absolutely. I'm a big fan, right? I'm a big fan of a 3-minute phone call, a 2-minute phone call. And I tell people, if you could just create a gratitude schedule, I actually just did a blog post about it last week. If you could just create a gratitude schedule, a gratitude schedule is easy, right? If my drive home from the office to my house is 30 minutes, right, and I have, I want to spend 15 minutes to myself, and I want to spend 15 minutes, and I want to talk to 5 people. It's a 3-minute phone call. I call them. Hey, Carla, what's going on? It's Anthony. I'm on the way home. I had a few minutes. Just wanted to tell you one. I really appreciate everything you're doing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I only have a few minutes, so I just want to let you know I'm thinking about you, right? That conversation alone, huge. When it comes from an executive, it comes from a sales leader, it is held in such high regard where people are like, man, they appreciate me. I'm not calling you to say, what's your numbers? I'm not calling you to ask for more revenue. I'm not calling you to ask what happened on the other day. I'm just saying, hey, man, I was thinking about you and I appreciate what you do.
That's a drop the mic moment. So, Anthony, thank you for coming on. Tell us what's the best way that listeners can reach out to you, pick up a copy of your book, listen to your podcast, and engage with your organization.
Yeah, absolutely. My website's AnthonyPGarcia.com, as in AnthonyPaulGarcia.com. If you want to pick up a copy of the book, it's available for free at CatapultingCommissions.com. All I simply ask is that you pitch in a few bucks to cover the cost of shipping and handling. That literally just pays for the book, shipping, and my team to ship it out to you. So essentially giving the book away for free. If you really want the book and you can't transform or can't get to CatapultingCommissions.com, it's available on Amazon for $24.95. But I think your listeners should just go to CatapultingCommissions.com, and they'll be able to pick up a copy of the book for free there.
Excellent. Well, Anthony, thank you so much for coming on today. It was a pleasure having you.
Mike, thanks for this opportunity. Have a great day.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneurssradio.com.